Well, welcome to another Bourbon Speak. This is where we have a casual discussion about bourbon and whiskey. Our first one we did was with Jennifer over at Grapes and Grains, and we decided to have one behind the Bourbon Mansion. Kim has been coming up with some podcast style discussion, so I'm going to let her get in right to it, and we appreciate for you being here with us today.
Okay, so as we're around the house, or if we're out shopping, talking about bourbon or talking about the videos you're making, there are some questions that came up for me, just trying to understand all the things that are going on with bourbon, with the tasting, with other people doing videos, all of that stuff. And I thought maybe there might be other folks out there who could be very new to bourbon who might have some of those questions as well. So let me go. This is not a test.
Oh no.
It's not a test, no. First of all, if you would kind of summarize your evolution with bourbon. I know for me, the first time I ever tasted bourbon, it was awful and I never wanted any anymore. And then as I was much older and tasted bourbon and had some freedom to choose a different kind of bourbon and really kind of look for something more that I liked, I had a different appreciation for it. So maybe you could talk about when you started having bourbon and to now, how there might be differences.
Well, as most people, when you're young, you drink for effect. You don't drink for quality. And so bourbon back then, for me being young, was Jim Beam, Jack Daniels, anything that was probably sub $20. That's probably what I was buying. And I was Jack and Coke, whatever, I was mixing it. They're drinking for effect, not really for the quality, not really for the taste. So as I get older, I start getting into cocktails, and the cocktails seem to always be defined by the quality of the mixer. And after a while, I'm kind of getting tired of finding good mixers. I wanted to find good liquors, and for some reason, I've never really been a gin guy. To me, that's like drinking kerosene.
Absolutely.
And I'd gone through my years of tequila, and that was maybe really a margarita guy. So it was like I was trying to get the perfect margarita, and started getting into higher end tequilas, and then it just dawned on me that there were some really good bourbons that I was hearing about at the time, and I don't remember how I was exposed to it, but Buffalo Trace came into my world several years ago, and like I said, I was looking to experience something different, I was getting tired of margaritas, and I tried Buffalo Trace, and it was probably in a cocktail, because you just don't go from drinking margaritas to drinking bourbon neat. Mm-mm. It isn't a good experience. So I don't know how or why it happened, but we started buying Buffalo Trace.
Because I liked it.
You liked it. And I'm like, wow, this is bourbon? Not what I remembered from bourbon. And it was affordable, and at the time we could find it. It wasn't the easiest thing. It wasn't like it wasn't at every store, but we could find it. And that kind of led me into looking more and more into bourbon, and coming to find out there's a whole world out there of bourbons that's all about quality and taste, and not about what you're going to put into a cocktail. And it's like that Buffalo Trace just kind of opened it up for me into where I am today, was that what we call our bourbon journey. Like, Buffalo Trace started it, and I wanted to, well, if Buffalo Trace is good, there's got to be other ones out there good too. So I wanted to try other ones. And the next thing I know, I'm collecting bourbons. And then I got this stupid idea that I would start a YouTube channel talking about the bourbons I love. It's probably how everybody on YouTube starts a bourbon channel, because they got a collection there and going like, well, if I'm going to buy any more bourbons, I need a reason for it. So.
Well, it's something, I think it's something you enjoy doing, and anytime there's any activity that you enjoy doing, you want to share it with other people. So that gives you a road to share that bourbon with.
And,
okay.
And when there's true that there are people out there that review bourbons for money. I'm not one of them. So
no, there's no money.
There's no money in it, just so you know.
Okay, so when you go in a spirit shop, a liquor store, what are you looking for as a consumer in that store? Can you maybe give a little detail about the store you would want to go in and how it differentiates between a store you don't want to go in?
All right. And in my journey, especially when I started hunting bourbon, I would just pick 4 or 5 stores in the area and not do any due diligence. And I'd go in there, and the best thing they had was like Jack Daniel's barbecue blend or some stupid flavor, and going like, all right, I'm never going to find the quality of bourbons. And I was looking for a little better quality of bourbons. Nothing against Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels has some good stuff, but the bourbons I was looking for wasn't in a lot of the neighborhood stores to a large degree. Ones that simply, they're there to sell beer, wine, and inexpensive whiskey.
The 4 or 5 top consumer.
Yeah. So I started having to look for the stores that had somebody in there managing it, or the owner, that was really into bourbon. And these people were going and selecting bourbons, what we call store picks. And that's what really interested me, is finding the stores that were selecting their own bourbons, something that was unique, that wouldn't be at the next store, or they did stock the kind of bourbons that I like, and they were reasonably priced. So there's kind of like a twofold thing. One, you don't want to overpay for your bourbon.
Right.
And two, you want your store to come up with the new releases and to do things like be involved in store picks, which is typically a single barrel.
Excellent. Something that is very interesting to me, and I don't really quite understand why. I think it's an aesthetic viewpoint, an artistic viewpoint of the bourbons, is when you go in the store, one of the things I find very entertaining is the different bottles. Everybody has a different bottle, and you have to assume that they've chosen that bottle because it conveys a message, and it also helps to sell it. So how does that bottle appearance, and even the things that are written on the bottle, help to sell you a bottle of bourbon?
Well, as someone who collects bourbon, you always like an interesting looking bottle. And it's kind of like when you go to a car lot and you see your favorite color automobile. That's the first thing that attracts you to it, and then you want to go in and look into it more. That's what the bottle does for a lot of bourbon connoisseurs, is they're going like, wow, that's an interesting shape. I want to pick it up and look at it. Now, I've actually said this on the channel more than once. Buy a bourbon for what's inside it, not for what it's contained in. But everyone likes a good looking bottle on their shelf. And there's some fabulous looking bottles out there, and a lot of these people go to a lot of trouble of making a good looking bottle. Just make sure that all the money is not in the bottle and none in the bourbon, because everyone's made that mistake, including me, of buying a bourbon for a cool looking bottle. I would tell people, if you see a bottle of an interesting shape and you don't know anything about it, Google it. Go
Ask
on
a friend.
YouTube, hear the reviews about it, because sometimes you'll find out like, oh, this is really good, or it's like, no, they put the money in the bottle and nothing else. But when I look at the bottle, what I want to see is, do they make their own bourbon? Do they distill it? Do they source it for another company? Because sourcing it is really big. There's a lot of small companies that buy their distilled juice, as we call it, from other places and either simply bottle it, or sometimes they will age it and bottle it, but it's not their whiskey, it's not their bourbon, it's someone else's. So be aware of, when you're picking up that cool looking bottle, where's the bourbon coming from? There's nothing wrong with buying bourbon that is not from Kentucky. There's a lot of good bourbons out there that are outside of Kentucky, but you need to read the label on the bottle. The more information you get, where it's distilled, what the mash bill is, percentage of corn, rye, barley, possibly wheat. After a while, you'll learn to look for those things. And if you see a bottle that has no information on it, it just says, I was distilled in Indiana, and that's all it tells you, put the bottle back.
Interesting. See, I'm probably more likely to, especially if it's a gift. Well, if it's a gift, I'm probably looking for something I know that person likes. But if you're just out there and you're going to buy a bourbon and you don't know anything about it, you'd probably go for the fancier bottle. And I wonder sometimes if that's what they're after, is the market of that inexperienced bourbon buyer who just wants something that looks really fancy. I did hear a discussion one time about, what was it? They were talking about one of the fairly popular bourbons, and I don't remember the name of it, but that everybody thought it was a great bourbon. And then people who drank bourbons did not really have that high of an opinion on it, but it had gained that reputation. So people who were, what would you say, novices would probably buy it just simply because of that reputation.
So just remember that you're there for what's inside the bottle, so you just need to make sure that it's balanced. Now, there are some bourbons out there, for example, Old Forester. There is, like, it's an old-fashioned whiskey-looking bottle. There's nothing fancy about it, but the Whiskey Row series is some of the best bourbon for the money you can buy. But the bottle is as plain as Jane. There's nothing fancy to it all.
It looks like a bottle from 50 years ago.
And in fact, the fact that it has a cork is actually an improvement over some of their other ones that have a screw top. So don't let a screw top keep you from buying a bourbon or whiskey either. That's not an indication of quality.
Right, and there's at least one retailer who always points their customers to the one they make the most money on too. So
yeah,
you got to be careful about that.
And we all know, could be initials TW, maybe. Just be aware that when you go into some of these stores, the clerks that's advising you about bourbon may not even drink bourbon.
True.
So you need to find someone that actually drinks bourbon and ask them.
And I will say, in going with you to some of these stores, we have met some very knowledgeable people who really knew what they were talking about and could point someone in the right direction. They had tasted all of it, or they were aware of how bourbons might be similar, so they could really point you right where you wanted to go. Okay, so I've got one more question for you, and this one this one is like a little stumper. It's gonna make you think on your feet. So we're here at November of the year, and this is a time of the year that, you know, there's a lot of specialty things coming out. We haven't really seen a whole lot of that so far, I don't think. But
true.
If you could wiggle your nose or bring your magic wand out, and there was one bourbon that you would really like to have, maybe I'll put it on the Christmas list, what would it be? Maybe I won't.
I have subscribers that send me samples, and they deliver them right to my door, just in case you're wondering. And I get to taste a lot of bourbons beyond my ability to pay and or find these bourbons. And I will tell you that there's a lot of really expensive, good bourbons out there. And some of you know these, the Old Carters, the Old Forester birthday bourbons, any number of Sazerac or Buffalo's Trace products like Pappy and Taylor, and I just go on and on. Any of the good Weller line other than Special Reserve. There's a lot of great stuff out there that everybody is hunting and searching. But there's probably 2 bourbons that I would like to have if I could find and it wasn't severely overpriced. If they're allocated, a lot of times they will be a little higher than MSRP.
And they're hard to find.
And they're hard to find. I have 2 that I would really like to have in my collection. One is the Weller Antique 107, which I tasted.
You've been chasing that a while.
Been chasing that a long time because in Georgia you just don't see it. I mean, it's severely allocated in Georgia, but I hear up in Ohio you can go and buy it right off the shelf. And the other one is a new one for me. It's Willet 8-year Purple Top, which one of my subscribers and friends let me taste the other day, and that's magnificent. I'm a big wheated bourbon fan. It just happens to be my thing. I like a lot of the wheated bourbons. It's a style of bourbon, just like high rye is a style of bourbon. So that would probably be the 2. I have no desire to find or pay for a Pappy 23-year-old bourbon that would cost me $2,000 if you could find it. I have no interest in buying a bourbon that I would be scared to drink because it's too expensive. Yeah. It's just like, no.
It's like using your good china every day.
Yeah, it's like, I have bourbons that I drink daily. I don't drink every day, by the way, so.
That's just a term. That's not a description.
Yeah, a daily sipper just means what you would drink during the week if you had one. And I have bourbons that I like to have on the weekend or a special occasion, and those 2 would be a special occasion.
Right.
When I'm having a good day, or sometimes if you're having a bad day, you want something to make you feel better and just pick your mood up a little bit. One of those would do it. So.
Yeah. And that one's a little hard to find too.
So yeah, that's kind of like a special treat for me. That would be, for me, that would be what Pappy 15 or 23 would be for someone else. If I get it, I'm going to drink it. I'm not just going to put it up on a shelf and go, hey, look, I've got a Pappy 23.
Yeah, but for that, you could buy a whole lot of Buffalo Trace for me, right?
Yeah. So if you're a Buffalo Trace fan, the good thing is Buffalo Trace is finally
very reasonable.
Finally come back, and I actually see it in places for sub $30, and I thought I would never see it for under $30.
Yeah, that's good. I enjoy it.
Absolutely.
Well, I have more questions, but I don't want to drone on, and we can come back again. And
let's have another one of these. So
and if you have a question for him, put it in the comments.
And if you disagree with me, put it in the comments, and I don't dislike Jack Daniels. I have got 2 single barrel Jack Daniels up on my shelf that are barrel strength that I thoroughly enjoy.
I've got a Jack Daniels downstairs.
You do?
I think it's a honey Jack Daniels.
The honey. Yeah, well, there again, you're getting into the barbecue flavors.
Listen, you need to drink what you like.
You need to drink what you like. So YouTube is such a great place to learn about stuff, especially bourbon and whiskey.
Yeah, I would agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, and thank you for coming in and spending a little time for us. We'll come back. We'll try to do these as often as we can for another, what did we call this again?
Bourbon Speak.
Bourbon Speak. I've only done 2 of them. I can't remember. Crap. So Bourbon Speak. Come back for another Bourbon Speak. Cheers.
Cheers.